The music was already loud when Mira reached the wedding hall, but something felt wrong the moment she stepped inside. Guests moved past her in bright clothes, laughter spilling freely, yet no one looked at her for more than a second. She adjusted the gift in her hands and searched for the seating chart, expecting to find her name near the family table. It wasn't there. She checked again, slower this time. Still nothing, and Usher noticed her confusion and asked her to wait by the entrance. The word wait landed heavier than it should have. Mira stood near the door as couples and relatives passed, all guided smoothly to their seats. The lights were warm, the air smelled of flowers, and everything looked carefully planned. Too perfect. Minutes stretched. The music swelled. The ceremony was about to begin. Then Alina appeared. Mira had known her sister-in-law for 3 years. Alina was elegant, sharp, and always aware of who was watching. Today, she looked flawless. Her smile was polite, not kind. She didn't greet Mira like family. She looked at her like a problem that needed to be handled quickly. "There's been a small issue," Alina said softly. Mira felt her stomach tighten. "What kind of issue?" Alina leaned closer, careful to keep her voice low. She explained there was no seat prepared for Mira, not among the family, not among the guests. She spoke calmly, as if this were a normal mistake, something unavoidable. Then she added a sentence that cut through Mira's chest. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't cruel on the surface. It was worse. It was certain. A statement about difference, about background, about how some people simply did not belong in certain places. Mira froze. For a moment, she thought she had misunderstood. Weddings were loud. Nerves were high. But Alina's eyes were steady. There was no confusion there. "I helped you," Mira said quietly. "I planned with you." Alina's smile did not change. "This day isn't about that." Behind them, the doors began to close. The music rose. Guests took their seats. Mira realized this was not a mistake. It was a decision. She stepped back. Her hands shook, but she refused to let the tears fall. Not here, not where anyone could see. She nodded once, turned around, and walked out. Outside, the noise dropped to silence. The air was cool. Mira stood alone on the wide steps, the gift still in her hands, feeling foolish for thinking she belonged. Cars passed on the street. Somewhere inside, vows were being spoken. She remembered the nights she had stayed up with Alina, folding decorations, fixing lists, calming her fears. She remembered defending Alina when relatives complained, saying she was demanding, too proud. Mira had believed in her, trusted her. The betrayal burned slowly. It wasn't loud anger. It was a deep ache spreading through her chest. She felt small, reduced to something she had never chosen. Her worth dismissed in a single sentence. Her phone buzzed. A message from her husband. "Where are you?" Ceremony started. Mira stared at the screen. She didn't know how to explain this moment in words. She typed, erased, typed again. Finally, she wrote, "Outside. I'll explain later." She walked away from the hall without looking back that night. When the house was quiet, Mira sat alone in the dark living room. Her husband had returned late, confused and upset. He said Alina claimed there was a seating mix-up, that it was unfortunate but unintentional. Mira listened without interrupting. She could tell he wanted peace. She could also tell he didn't fully believe Alina's excuse. Mira said nothing more. The silence between them grew heavy. In the days that followed, the memory refused to fade. Mira went back to work, smiled when needed, answered messages she didn't care about. But inside her, something had shifted. She replayed the moment again and again. Alina's calm voice. The closed doors. The feeling of being erased. People sent wedding photos in group chats. Alina glowing at the center. Family smiling. Mira was not in a single frame. It was as if she had never been there at all. That hurt more than the words. Mira began to see other moments differently. The way Alina corrected her in public. The jokes about simple roots. The careful distance she kept when others were watching. None of it had been accidental. Mira had been tolerated, never accepted. At night, Mira lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She asked herself why it mattered so much. She had survived worse things. But this cut deeper because it came from someone she had trusted. Someone who smiled at her and still believed she was less. Anger finally arrived. Sharp and clear. Mira wasn't proud of it, but she didn't push it away either. She let it sit with her. She examined it. Beneath the anger was humiliation. Beneath that was grief. Not just for the insult, but for the illusion she had held on to. She thought about Alina's world, the way it ran on image and control. Mira had seen behind the curtain. She knew things. She had been close enough to understand how fragile that perfect surface really was. The thought scared her. It also gave her a strange sense of power. Myra stood by the window and watched the city lights blink in the distance. She told herself she wanted justice, not revenge. But the line between them felt thin. By the end of the week, one truth had settled firmly in her mind. What happened at the wedding was not the end of something small. It was the beginning of something much larger. Alina had drawn a line and pushed her across it. Mira would not forget that moment by the door. She would not forget how it felt to be judged without being known. And she would not pretend it didn't change her. As the night deepened, Mira made a quiet promise to herself. She would no longer stand quietly outside closed doors. What came next? She didn't yet know. But the betrayal had awakened something in her, something patient and watchful, and it was only the beginning. Days turned into weeks, and Mira found herself replaying the moment at the wedding over and over. Every detail was etched in her mind, the way Alina's lips curved into a polite smile. The cold certainty in her eyes, the hush of the room as she was turned away. Myra could not stop thinking about it, and the more she thought, the clearer it became. This was no accident. Alina had planned it. She had chosen to humiliate her. The thought sent a wave of anger that she could not ignore. Myra's life continued outwardly as normal. She went to work, helped her husband with family matters, and nodded along in conversations that required her attention. But inside, a storm raged. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw herself standing at the door, rejected, ignored. She felt the cold sting of exclusion and realized that it was not just a single insult, it was a message. Alina wanted her to feel less, to know that she didn't belong. That was a line Mira could not forgive easily. She began to observe Alina in a new light. Alina's every move, her words, her gestures, now seemed calculated. The way she smiled at relatives, the way she accepted praise, the way she positioned herself in every photograph fit, was all part of an image. An image Mira had once admired, perhaps even envied. Now she saw it as fragile, vulnerable to the smallest crack. And Mira had the knowledge to find those cracks. The first spark of revenge came quietly. Myra started by recalling small details only she knew, agreements Alina had made with vendors. Promises she had stretched, favors she had taken without returning. None of it was illegal, none of it could ruin her completely, but if revealed carefully, it could make people question the perfection Alina had built. Mira imagined her words landing softly, planting doubt. Showing that her sister-in-law's flawless image might be more carefully curated than real at first. Myra felt satisfaction in simply imagining it. She created scenarios in her head. A conversation, a discreet revelation. A quiet ripple of uncertainty through Alina's world. The pleasure was sharp but brief. Then came the second thought. What if this path changed her? She had always valued herself for integrity. Could she become someone who used secrets as weapons, just to feel the satisfaction of power? She had to consider this. The line between justice and cruelty was thinner than she had expected. Mira's husband noticed her change. She was quieter, more distant, lost in thought for long stretches. He tried to reassure her, to remind her that she was overthinking, that Alina's actions were her own problem, not Mira's. But Mira felt that he didn't fully understand. He had not stood at the door, had not been dismissed in front of 100 silent witnesses. He could not know the weight of the humiliation. the gnawing desire to reclaim control over what had been taken. Her obsession grew, but so did her self-awareness. She did not want to lash out impulsively. She wanted the effect to be perfect, precise, undeniable, but subtle. She began documenting, mentally cataloging everything Alina had done that revealed her reliance on appearances. Vendors' lists, financial discrepancies, social favors, all small pieces of a puzzle that only Mira could see. The picture was clear. Alina's control was more fragile than anyone realized. And Mira held the key. Mira also wrestled with morality. Each time she imagined her plan succeeding, she felt a rush of satisfaction followed by unease. Was exposing someone's flaws truly justice? Or would it make her just as cruel as the person who had humiliated her? She asked herself repeatedly if she wanted to hurt Alina or simply reclaim her own dignity. The line blurred. The desire for revenge became entangled with fear that she might cross a line she could never uncross. The emotional tension built slowly, silently, in every interaction. Mira saw Alina's confidence in a new way. It was polished, but it had cracks, and Mira was the only one who could see them clearly. This realization made her feel powerful, yet vulnerable. Power was intoxicating, but it carried its own risks. If she acted impulsively, she could destroy not just Alina, but herself. Every scenario she imagined had consequences she could not control fully. In private moments, Mira reflected on the past. She remembered how she had stood by Alina, supported her during family disputes, celebrated her small victories. That loyalty had been dismissed. The rejection at the wedding had not just insulted her, had negated her past kindness. This fueled her internal debate. Should she act to balance the scales, or should she rise above, preserving her own integrity? Each choice carried weight. Mira also considered Alina's perspective. She tried to understand why her sister-in-law had acted as she did. Alina had rules, traditions, and ideas about social hierarchy that Mira could never fully accept. In Alina's mind, the act was necessary, even justified. Seeing this, Mira realized that revenge would not teach Alina morality. It would only assert power. The moral question lingered. Was satisfaction worth the cost? The weeks turned into months, and Mira's planning became sharper. She was careful not to reveal her knowledge to anyone prematurely. She observed, waited, and refined her understanding of timing. She knew that the right moment could amplify the impact, while a careless action could backfire. In this process, Mira also learned more about herself, her patience, her strategic thinking, her ability to remain calm under pressure. The desire for revenge sharpened her mind, but also tested her soul. One evening, Mira sat by the window, looking at the city lights flickering in the distance. She imagined Alina's perfect moments, public praise, social events, the admiration of family and friends. Now she understood that perfection was fragile. She held knowledge that could subtly shift perception. But she did not act immediately. She let the thought linger, testing her resolve. She asked herself, would she be satisfied if she executed her plan? Or would the act leave a hollow victory? Mira's internal conflict reached its peak during quiet nights. Anger and sadness mixed with calculation. She felt the weight of every choice pressing down. Revenge was tempting, sweet and clean in her mind, but restraint was wiser, stronger. She realized that she could confront Alina, assert herself, and reclaim dignity without crossing into cruelty. She could wield her knowledge as power, but also as a lesson in self-respect. Through it all, Mira transformed. The humiliation at the wedding had initially left her broken, but the struggle had made her sharper, more aware. She understood that revenge was not just about hurting someone else. It was about confronting her own emotions, navigating morality, and deciding what kind of person she wanted to be. By the end of this period, Mira was no longer the person who had stood at the door, dismissed and powerless. She had become observant, deliberate, and patient. The choice to act or not was hers alone. The internal struggle had sharpened her mind and strengthened her resolve. She knew the moment to confront Alina might come soon, but when it did, she had to choose wisely. Mira's journey through this conflict was not about impulsive revenge. It was about understanding the nature of betrayal, examining her own desires, and preparing for a confrontation that would define her future. She realized that power could be subtle, that dignity could be reclaimed without malice, and that the hardest battles were often fought within. And in that quiet tension, the stage was set. Mira had observed, calculated, and wrestled with her own morality. She was ready, not yet to strike, but to decide the moment her actions would speak. The struggle had transformed anger into focus, pain into insight. Mira understood that the true test of revenge was not its execution, but the wisdom to know when and if it should be used, too. Her plan was forming in her mind. The opportunity would appear, and she would face the choice between destruction and dignity. She would confront Ellie not with cruelty, but with clarity. The struggle had prepared her for this, and when the moment came, Mira would know what to do. The storm within her had not settled, but it had sharpened. Anger, patience, morality, and power coexisted, preparing Mira for the ultimate test. The conflict had revealed her strength and her limits. She was ready for the climax. Months passed after the wedding, and Mira kept her thoughts carefully contained. She went about her life outwardly calm, but inside she was alert, waiting for the moment that would allow her to reclaim control. That moment arrived unexpectedly when an invitation arrived in her mailbox, a charity gala where Alina would be honored. Mira recognized the significance immediately. Alina would be in the spotlight, praised for her generosity, admired by friends and strangers alike. Everything she had built would be on display, and Mira now held knowledge that could quietly undermine that perfection. The envelope in her hand felt heavier than it should. Inside were details about financial discrepancies, favors promised but not fulfilled, and social promises stretched beyond what Alina had delivered. None of it was illegal, none of it would bring ruin, but it had the power to seed doubt, to make people question the pristine image Alina had cultivated. Mira felt the familiar rush of power at the thought of using it. Her heart raced. This was the moment she had been preparing for. Backstage at the gala, Mira watched Alina prepare for her entrance. Alina's posture was perfect, her smile polished, radiating confidence and charm. Guests were already seated, applauding lightly as the event began. Mira felt the old anger stir the memory of the wedding, the rejection, the humiliation. She imagined Alina standing on that stage, unaware that her world could be shifted with a single revelation. For a long moment, Mira considered acting. She could release the information discreetly, subtly, and watch as whispers began to erode Alina's flawless reputation. It would be satisfying, she told herself. Justice served quietly, efficiently. But the thought of crossing that line brought a new kind of fear. She remembered her own values, her integrity, and wondered if revenge was truly the answer. Could she hurt someone deliberately and still feel at peace afterward? Mira's mind raced as the event continued. Alina was receiving praise from the audience. Speeches were made about her kindness and dedication. Every compliment felt like a reminder of the wedding moment, the way she had been excluded. Mira clenched the envelope in her hand, torn between desire and restraint. She imagined the gasps, the questions, the sudden uncertainty in Alina's perfect image. The temptation was intoxicating. Then Mira remembered the lessons she had learned during her struggle. The weeks of watching, planning, wrestling with her morality had shown her that power was not in destruction, but in choice. True strength lay in maintaining dignity, in confronting injustice without sinking to the level of cruelty. She realized that revenge could satisfy briefly, but it could also consume, leaving her hollow. The speeches concluded. Alina stepped onto the stage to accept her honor. The applause was thunderous. Mira felt a pull toward action, a final surge of the old anger, but she noticed something she had not anticipated. People were listening closely to the way Alina spoke, watching the gestures, the sincerity in her eyes. The room held attention in a way that reminded Mira of something important. Words, when chosen carefully, could carry weight without malice. Mira made her decision. She would not release the envelope. She would not shatter Alina's image with hidden truths. Instead, she waited for the microphone to be passed to the audience for acknowledgments. When it reached her, she stood calmly, heart steady, and spoke. Not accusations, not gossip. She told a story, short, precise, but powerful. A story about dignity, respect, and the quiet wounds caused by exclusion. She spoke of how people should not be judged by their origins or appearances. About how small acts of disregard could leave lasting scars. The room fell quiet. People listened, some nodding, some reflecting. Alina's confident smile faltered slightly. She realized what Mira had done not destroyed her, but confronted her. Not with cruelty, but with truth. Myra's words carried weight because they were sincere, measured, and undeniable. They revealed the injustice without descending into attack, allowing others to see the impact of actions without drama or spectacle. Mira felt a strange calm as she stepped back. She had chosen power, but not the kind that crushes. She had chosen confrontation with clarity, not vengeance with malice. She watched as Alina returned to her seat, slightly shaken, uncertain, but unharmed. The audience had been reminded of the importance of fairness and respect. Mira had reclaimed her dignity, and in doing so, she had risen above the humiliation. After the event, Alina sought Mira. Gone was the radiant, untouchable confidence. In its place was hesitation, a quiet acknowledgement of the power Mira held not in secrets, but in truth. They did not exchange apologies, but a conversation followed, one of tentative understanding. Mira realized she did not need vindication to feel complete. She had confronted the wrong, reclaimed her voice, and maintained her integrity. That was enough. Mira walked away from the gala lighter than she had in months. She understood the lesson of the struggle. Revenge can offer a fleeting sense of satisfaction. But true freedom comes from restraint, wisdom, and self-respect. She did not need to shatter Alina's life to reclaim her own. By speaking carefully, with clarity, she had shifted the balance without harm, proving that power and dignity could coexist. That night, Mira reflected on the journey. The wedding humiliation, the weeks of internal conflict, the desire for revenge, all of it had led to this moment. She understood that anger could be channeled into insight, that patience could transform desire for payback into strength. She had learned that confrontation need not equal destruction, and that integrity could be more satisfying than triumph. In the quiet of her home, Mira felt a sense of closure. The envelope remained in her possession, a reminder of what she could have done, but she did not need to use it. She had taken control not through harm, but through courage and wisdom. The experience had reshaped her understanding of justice, power, and self-respect. Mira realized that revenge is tempting because it promises immediate satisfaction. But the true measure of strength is knowing when not to act. She had faced the ultimate test and emerged with her dignity intact. Alina had been confronted subtly but effectively, and Mira had reclaimed her own place in the world not as a victim, but as someone who chose her response wisely. The storm that had begun at the wedding had passed, leaving clarity in its wake. Mira understood that power lies not in causing others to fall, but in standing tall oneself. The choice to speak truth without malice had granted her a victory that revenge could never have offered. She had learned to transform humiliation into insight, anger into strategy, and the desire for payback into self-respect. As she looked ahead, Mira knew she would carry this lesson with her. Life would continue to present challenges, betrayals, and moments of injustice. But she had discovered the most valuable tool of all, the ability to choose her response, to confront wrongs with courage and dignity, and to rise above without losing herself. The night ended with quiet reflection. Mira had won not by destroying another, but by reclaiming her own power. The choice she made had lasting consequences, shaping who she was and who she would become. And in that moment, she understood fully that revenge is rarely worth the cost, while integrity and self-respect can transform pain into true strength.